And now, on the Passionate Eye. As part of Scientology's inner circle, he helped recruit its biggest star.
Cruz started making some noises about getting some help. That became #1 priority. I was helping him in all aspects of his life.
Now, Marty Rathbun is lifting the lid on pressure tactics he says are used against people leaving the church.
Come on, Marty. Got anything to say?
Tactics he helped devise.
There's a PI out in front of my house right now.
As Scientology's highest level defector, he's now on the receiving end of his own harsh methods.
They would go out there and just say the most salacious things about myself and my wife.
They've sent sex toys to my job. They've sent PIs to my dad's house, to my ex-husband.
An insider's expose.
There's no bigger threat to the existence of the Church of Scientology than Marty Rathbun.
Scientologists at war.
Scientology was born in the 1950s when science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard wrote a self-help book he claimed could save mankind. Dianetics was advertised as a powerful alternative to psychotherapy.
Your reactive mind is the cause of what's wrong in your life. But with Dianetics, you're going to learn how to get rid of it.
In 1977, college dropout Marty Rathbun became interested in Hubbard's Church of Scientology.
My brother was diagnosed as schizophrenic. I had left college. I was going to travel around the world and write novels and books and find answers. And my father called me at the end of the first summer I was out and told me my brother got institutionalized again. And I encountered Scientology during that ordeal.
Marty was audited, a key part of Scientology that involves being questioned while hooked up to an E-meter, a sort of lie detector, to uncover past trauma.
I signed a billion-year contract to make it my life's work. And I spent 27 years in the Sea Organization. That's how I got into Scientology.
A dedicated member, Marty joined the church's elite Sea Organization, which had adopted a naval-style uniform and hierarchy. He quickly rose up its ranks, working in founder L. Ron Hubbard's personal service. He also worked closely with David Miscavige, a rising young power in the organization, and was displayed as his right-hand man. One night, in January 1986, Hubbard's church would change forever.
Ladies and gentlemen, the event starts now.
It was 25-year-old David Miscavige who delivered the news of Hubbard's death, presenting himself as his natural successor.
Hello, my name is David Miscavige, and I'm very happy that you could all make it to this important briefing this evening.
He was short-tempered, ruthlessly loyal to Hubbard, and that was, in that culture at that time, was the winning hand.
In 1980, LRH moved off the lines so that he could continue his writings and researches without any distractions.
Being a messenger, he had a leg up, and he became accomplished at the art of the politics of Scientology.
At 2,000 hours Friday, the 24th of January, AD 36, L. Ron Hubbard discarded the body he had used in this lifetime.
L. Ron Hubbard is now God, and he's appointed Jesus. And so he's Jesus Christ to Scientologists, and it's a matter of belief.
We want to make sure that all of us end cycle on this completely so we can get on with the job that is ahead of us.
Within a year, Miscavige had taken control. He promoted Marty to one of the most powerful positions in Scientology. As this church publication reveals, Marty was tasked with keeping Scientology free from subversion. He ruthlessly defended Miscavige's regime and protected its innermost secrets. To progress spiritually in Scientology, you must go through a number of stages that can cost thousands of dollars and take many years. Only the most dedicated are told the secrets of Level 3, in which Scientology's history of mankind is finally revealed. 75 million years ago, a tyrant named Xenu ruled the Galactic Confederation, a coalition of 76 planets. One of these planets was Tigak, which we now call Earth. The Confederation was suffering from an overpopulation problem, so Xenu had billions of people drugged and sent to Earth. He placed their paralyzed bodies around volcanoes, into which he dropped hydrogen bombs. With the bodies now blown up, only the souls, or as Hubbard calls them, thetans, were left. The thetans entered whatever human bodies they could still find. According to Hubbard, these thetans remain in our bodies and are the source of all human woes. Scientology aims to completely clear an individual of their body thetans.
I just find that such a deception that it's not until you've given them $100,000 they say, oh, by the way, your body's infested with hundreds and thousands of invisible alien beings. How many people would join Scientology if they were told that on day one?
In church pictures, Miscavige is positioned at the very heart of operations, with the spirit of L. Ron Hubbard in the background. Marty was in charge of punishing anyone who questioned either of them.
We put him on the RPF, which is a prison camp, essentially. It's a behavior modification camp. I didn't think twice about quelling opposition or silencing critics or punishing somebody who had an errant thought about David Miscavige or L. Ron Hubbard.
I had apparently very thoroughly insulted David Miscavige personally. I get walked into a room, Marty's sitting on the other side of the table with his full Sea Org Class A Navy uniform and hat, and, you know, sit down, pick up the cans. And so I'm sitting there and I don't know what to tell him. I'm thinking, I want to get the hell out of here. And then Needle moves and he says, that. And I'm saying, I'm not going to tell him I want to get the hell out of here. We're going back and forth and he's pushing. And then he slams his hand on the desk and says, stop fucking around with me.
My name is Tony Ortega. I'm a journalist who's been writing about the Church of Scientology for 17 years.
Tony left his editorship at the Village Voice newspaper and now reports on Scientology full-time.
Reporting on Scientology, they do their best to kind of creep you out, and I've definitely had some creepy moments. It's just part of the job.
Can I ask you who you're filming for?
It's documenting all the crazy stuff that's going on.
For your own or for OSA or?
For somebody.
You don't want to say who?
Nah.
From L. Ron Hubbard's writings, Marty and Miscavige had guidelines on how to maintain order in the church and silence dissenters.
L. Ron Hubbard, it spelled out how to treat somebody who's criticizing Scientology, in particular reporters. He created this game plan saying that you can say anything or harm people in any way.
Journalists investigate him, do noisy investigations.
They put one of their private investigators out to interview every person that person knows, former colleagues.
To try to shudder them into silence.
But church leaders had bigger problems. Unless Scientology could be recognized as a religion, they'd have to pay the IRS a $1 billion tax bill.
We probably had 1/4 of that in total assets. So yeah, it was a life and death scenario. We had hundreds, if not thousands of lawsuits ongoing, and I was coordinating all of them, and every one of the intelligence guys and every one of the PR guys.
It was a coordinated harassment campaign to wear down the IRS, and it had its effect.
Scientologists from around the world have gathered for the announcement of our biggest breakthrough ever.
After 25 years of campaigning, Miscavige was able to announce one of the church's greatest victories. Marking the occasion with all the glitz and glamour of a Hollywood awards ceremony, Miscavige took the opportunity to name-check Marty and his pivotal role in the win.
Marty Rathbun and I were in Washington, D.C. Off we proceeded down to 1111 Constitution Avenue. We presented ourselves to security at the front door and informed them we were there to see the commissioner of the IRS. Is he expecting you, they asked. No, was our response. But if you phone him on the intercom and tell him we are from the Church of Scientology, I am sure he'd love to see us.
We essentially told him, look, it's draining a tremendous amount of your money, it's draining a tremendous amount of ours. Why don't we see whether the cooler heads can prevail?
There will be no $1 billion tax bill which we can't pay. There will be no more discrimination. There will be no more nothing.
Commissioner was just exhausted of all the, constant attacks. I've talked to a previous IRS commissioner who went through the same thing, and they would call him in the middle of the night. I mean, it was just kind of constant harassment that the church just finally brought the IRS, one of America's most legendary organizations, to its knees.
The IRS issued letters recognizing Scientology and every one of its organizations as fully tax-exempt. The war is over!
Marty's next big mission was to pull off the ultimate PR coup, finding a poster boy for Scientology. His target, Tom Cruise. The Church of Scientology works hard to attract big names, even creating specialist centers for celebrities. Tom Cruise had become interested in Scientology after marrying actress Mimi Rogers, a second-generation Scientologist. When they broke up, he married Nicole Kidman and drifted away. Now the biggest movie star in the world, and his marriage to Nicole failing, the time was right to make him the church's new poster boy.
Cruise started making some noises about getting some help. Miscavige had me drop everything, and that became #1 priority. I helped him on his divorce with Nicole, and then I was auditing him, and I was helping him get Penelope auditing, and I was helping him on all aspects of his life.
And that won him back over to the church?
Yeah.
Miscavige's blossoming friendship with the star was to signal the end of Marty.
Once Miscavige was able to begin to hobnob with Cruise again, I was like, he was done with me. And he was, he actually began to try to denigrate me a little bit in Tom's eyes, because Tom, was his biggest opinion leader, having salvaged his marriage, his kids, his family life, his, even his career, I mean, it was crazy. So Miscavige really had to start undermining me in front of Cruise.
Marty was now out of favor, and in February 2004 found himself in a behavioral modification facility he knows as the Hole. The church denies the existence of any such place, but confirms at the end of 2003 he was assigned for correction and reposting.
People would take their turns, and they go up and they have to confess all of these nefarious intentions against David Miscavige. And they would sit up there for hours, and people would interrogate them and throw water bottles at them, punch them, kick them, or whatever, until they would get these confessions out.
Marty was put with a group of other senior executives.
The minute he was briefing everybody about me coming in to join them, I looked at the people and I saw their glassy eyes, and I went, this guy is going to turn me into one of them.
All of them were facing their biggest fear, being expelled from the church that had become their home, friends, and family.
So Miscavige walks in with a boombox and a Queen tape, Bohemian Rhapsody, and he tells them all, we're all going to play musical chairs. Whoever's missing from the chair, you are going to be offloaded from the base. You're going to be sent off with, $50. No way you can ever be in Scientology again. And he told everybody that the song was all about them, that they have committed such horrendous crimes that it really doesn't matter anymore, which, like it says in the song. So most of the people fought pretty strenuously, and they got to the point where they were tearing chairs apart and throwing each other up against walls, and, the fewer people that were involved, and Miscavige kept pimping them on, the further they got into it. I went like 2 rounds.
What did you make of it?
That Miscavige is stark staring mad, and that people have gotten so conditioned to it that this whole place is mad.
The church describe the game as an educational exercise and say that Marty's version of events is exaggerated and there was no violence then or in confessionals. But for Marty, The game marked a major turning point.
I'm not the type to be in prison, and I'm not going to be in prison. I decided to get out of there, and as the whole group was being led back to the hole, I got to the very back of the line, and as they were ushering people in, I slipped behind some bushes, and I went and found my motorcycle, which was on a different part of the property, and I moved it to the back, to where the back gate is. You got to phone to the security gate, which is like 300 yards up the road, and have a reason and have okay to go before they'll open the gate for you. So I just waited patiently in the bushes until somebody came along who was in a delivery truck who had the okay to go. I started up the engine, and I was like 50 yards away, and I timed it perfectly so that the guy was out the gate, and the gate was coming back, closing, and I just punched the gas, threaded the needle, got out the gate before it closed, and just took off down the highway.
But alone and away from the world he'd known for 27 years, Marty was soon persuaded to return and discuss his issues with the church. He was put to work in a Scientology carpentry mill, stripped entirely of his status and standing. Meanwhile, Miscavige celebrated Tom Cruise by rewarding the Mission Impossible star with a new honor in yet another lavish ceremony, topped with action movie music and military salutes.
I have never met a more competent, a more intelligent, a more tolerant, a more compassionate being. We are lucky to have you, and thank you very much.
Soon after, Marty packed a bag and walked away from Scientology for good. He went into hiding in Texas and let rumors grow that he was dead. He now had to rebuild his life.
Hey, honey.
We met on Match.com, and he said on the phone, you know, if you want to find out anything about me, you know, don't look me up on the internet. Just ask me, and I'll tell you. And I'm like, okay. As I'm on the phone, I'm looking him up. You know, I'm reading this thing, and it's saying he's dead. And I'm like, okay, I'm on the phone with him, and he's, you know, whatever. So that was our first telephone conversation.
Marty hated the church, but still loved Scientology. With the use of the e-meter and auditing banned outside the church, he had no way of practicing the faith he'd dedicated his life to.
You think you're saving not only the world, but the entire universe for 30 years, and then how do you find a purpose that even has any meaning?
And he wouldn't get out of bed, and he wouldn't eat, and he just was laying there, and I was like, something ain't right. You're like, what the hell? I mean, I had created this little world with him, and it was going, and it was nothing I could do because I knew that I couldn't give him what he was looking for in the church. Like, I didn't understand any of that. I didn't even speak his language. I thought, okay, he had these trunks in the garage that had his books, his Scientology books, and I'm like, I wonder if there's something in there that I could find out in there that I could read, that I could use to help him get better.
We're just going to do an interview, okay? To see if we can find something of interest that there's...
Marty had been a top auditor, Scientology's version of therapy.
Pete were here, what would you tell him?
Auditors ask questions and measure the emotional response of the participant on the e-meter to pinpoint the underlying causes of unhappiness. Once the problem is found, the auditor attempts to unburden the sufferer. Seeing how much he liked to help people, Mosey persuaded him to start again.
Okay, end of session.
I had been with him for 3.5 years at that point, had never seen him so excited about being alive. Like, he just was just so, wow. And I was like, okay, whatever you did in there, you need to keep doing, because this is really cool. So, yeah, I did. I did encourage him to keep going.
Marty had found his place in the world and was now sure it wasn't his beliefs at fault, but the church. He started to blog, telling people he was practicing Scientology independently. He'd been well known as a celebrity auditor, and people began flying in from all over the world for sessions.
Matter of fact, I need to show you something.
His blog about independent Scientology took off and has become a rallying point for disaffected Scientologists all over the world.
Church members are trained very well to ignore anything critical that shows up in the press. When Marty Rathbun writes something critical of Miscavige or the church on his blog, it reaches deep into the membership of Scientology. Now they're suddenly saying, I still believe in Hubbard, I still believe in the technology, but I don't want to have anything to do with the Church of Scientology anymore. I'm now an independent. I often tell people that there's no bigger threat to the existence of the Church of Scientology than Marty Rathbun's blog.
Before long, former high-level Scientologists were visiting Marty to talk about creating a new movement.
Most people I've met who've heard bad things about Scientology, the moment you say, I'm a Scientologist, their face drops, they look, you know, oh no. The moment you say, but I'm not a member of the Church of Scientology, I'm independent of Scientology, they brighten up again.
Exactly.
And they're interested.
Exactly.
I think it's eminently solvable.
Interestingly, more and more people are practicing Scientology in the comfort of their homes. You know, people are doing it. It's beginning to burgeon.
Marty was about to attract unwanted attention from people who objected very strongly to what he was doing.
All right, I've got you guys now. Now leave. Good. And don't come back.
A group calling themselves the Squirrel Busters have descended on Marty Rathbun's sleepy seaside town. They tell locals they are producing a documentary expose that will reveal who Marty really is.
The whole basis of Scientology is that you follow L. Ron Hubbard's processes to the letter. And it was L. Ron Hubbard who grew this organization. So to leave that organization and say you're going to practice Scientology away from it, the church just considers anybody that does that a heretic, or in their word, a squirrel.
Come on, Marty. Got anything to say? You can't even defend yourself on this, can you?
What's your name?
I gave you my name, Marty.
What's your name?
Marty, I gave you my name. Now let's go take a look at a folder.
What's your name?
Why don't you answer his question?
What's your name?
Marty, let's take a look at a folder. You can't touch him, Marty.
What's your name?
Come on, Marty. Go get me your meter. You're squirreling, and we would like to
What's
see
your
that
name,
bring to an
please?
end.
The Squirrel Busters were trusted, high-level Scientology members organized by the Office of Special Affairs, the propaganda and dirty tricks arm of the Church of Scientology, sent down to get in my face and to make my life a living hell. You're interrupting the delivery of Scientology, which is...
Marty, you don't deliver Scientology and haven't for years.
Miscarriages.
I've been reading your blogs, Marty. There's just no way you're delivering anything to do with Scientology.
All right, I've got you guys now. Now leave. And don't come back. You know, they have a whole camera crew, and people dressed up with shirts with my face and blazoned on it with a international strikeout symbol across it. I told you to leave. Get out of here.
Oh, no, I'm leaving.
Beat it. Now, who's busting who?
Marty, you're the one who's busted because you're the squirrel.
I said, get off my property, boy. Okay. And they told me they were going to be there for as long as it takes. I know exactly what that means. I mean, that's David Miscavige language. That means until I am busted financially and penniless. You guys going to stick around here?
Yeah, Marty, we're here for weeks. Weeks and weeks.
As long as it takes.
And then after that day, it was just every day for almost 200 days. They were just always in our face.
5 cameras. There's one, there's 2 on the head, there's 3 with Ralph, there's 4 with Bart,
We've
and
just
there's
discovered that
5
Marty
on Bart's
and his
head.
wife
He's got They were telling people they were making a documentary as a cover, but they would go out there and just say the most salacious things about myself and my wife.
Marty has no regard for Mosey as a woman. We know that from the type of sex toys in his collection.
They've sent sex toys to my job. They've sent PIs to my dad's house, to my ex-husband, to all my ex-co-workers, my ex-boss. I mean, they've done, you name it, they've done it.
Fuck off. Get off the cart, punk. The end game is not, you know, having your throat slit in your sleep. The end game is you thinking those things are a possibility because of the creepy stuff they do. And then you get so tired of living with that fear that you fold up your tent and you go home.
And what's it going to take to make you go home, Marty?
Take? There's nothing they can do. They can't do anything.
We found out that they were Scientologists, and there were a lot of people that did not like them and was giving all this propaganda stuff, you know. This is Texas. I don't know if it's redneck or whatever, but we take up for people. We ended up getting these long sprinklers that shoot out about 80 feet. We put them in all around the homes in the cul-de-sac. When they came the next time, we turned on the sprinklers full force. Okay?
That's not bad. That's why I'm running around. It's finally caught up with him.
Like this freaking rainforest in the courtyard. And they'd come down anyway with stupid ponchos on and like 100 degrees out there with these plastic things on. Like, you guys are idiots.
I'm Joanne, and this is Steve. We're the Squirrel Busters. Behind us is the squirrel himself, Marty Rathbun. Take a good look at the squirrel Marty.
With Marty seemingly under attack from the church, for many of his readers, there was an obvious question.
How do you feel now that you've had those tricks used against you?
Well, it's, you see, I don't, the question doesn't, I don't get the question. It's not like I went out and then it happened to me and then I went, oh, geez, that's not all right. I mean, I knew it wasn't all right. That's why I left.
You know, does he sit all day long saying, oh, I regret, you know, you can, you know, you're gonna regret your whole life. He spent his whole life there.
You hear people on the internet calling for you to be more apologetic. I mean, what's your reaction to that?
I don't read that stuff.
Stay out of my way, Mark.
Rich, you came 3,000 miles to get in front of my house. You want me to get out of your way now? What else do you want me to do? Get you cold water to drink?
Fine, I'm good, thank you.
You okay?
Appreciate your help.
All right.
Yeah.
Marty's blog has caught the attention of anti-Scientologists in Germany, where the organization is particularly under scrutiny.
Why are you going to Germany?
I'm going to Germany to clean up David Miscavige's mess that he's created over 3 decades and hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'm doing it free of charge, Rich.
He's seen here at a press conference in Hamburg, sat alongside former adversaries, making the case for independent Scientology.
Everyone you find outside of the church who continues to use Scientology left Scientology because they don't agree with people being forcibly disconnected from their families. They don't agree with people being put into extremely painful financial situations. They don't agree with people who have a different opinion being attacked, being harassed, and being hounded. You know, I mean, it's a huge mission to sort of undo 30 years of this type of activity, and now they intensify it on the guy who's trying to, you know, clean that up.
He was their favorite to send. He had already come to the house twice while Marty was gone, and I was never able to get a picture of him because they would always catch me off guard. So he looks at me, and I go, "Stop looking at me, you sleazeball." And he wouldn't stop. He's still like gawking at me like this sleazy thing, right? So I'm like, "Stop looking at me," and he still wouldn't stop.
Did you hear her?
Right there. So,
did you hear her?
I'll get that. I heard her.
You said don't look at her. Do you understand that?
So Marty goes in and knocks his glasses off and says, "Did you hear her? She told you to stop." So apparently when he did that, he got scratched.
The Squirrel Busters got in his face day after day after day. And part of the point is to get the person so frustrated that they take a swing.
We get ready to take Chiquita for our walk, and as we're walking down the stairs, one of the sheriffs, one of the ones we know, pulls up and says, "Hey, Mark, you know, I've got a warrant I need to issue." And it's like, huh?
And we don't know what I'm being arrested for.
A Class A assault warrant. I don't
What's
know.
Class A?
Class A is a Class A misdemeanor. You got Class C, Class B, Class A. Class A means somebody suffered a bodily injury as a result.
Somebody suffered a bodily injury from what I did.
Marty, I'm telling you what the warrant says.
Often, the Church of Scientology relies on law enforcement officials and judges who just don't know the whole picture. I mean, they've convinced law enforcement officers to raid people's homes and confiscate their computers and jail people. And you always wonder if those people knew the whole story, would they do that?
Mosey, did you ever see me hurt anybody?
No. I guess for a fact they got what they wanted, you know, in terms of him being in handcuffs. That's all it's ever been, is just for them to make into their little videos that they, you know, and magazines and you know, like, it's so dumb that people in the church don't see that.
Even when he's being arrested, handcuffed, and booked for assault with bodily harm, there's Kingpin Rathbone sticking to that well-worn story that no, he wouldn't even hurt a fly.
Marty was released shortly after being arrested, but he'd finally given the Squirrel Busters the PR victory they wanted. They released their documentary online under the name Marty Rathbun, violent psychopath, cult militia leader.
Rathbone likes to think of himself as a good man, a kind man, a tolerant man who grants the freedom of speech to all. Unless, of course, it's the free speech of a documentary crew covering him.
You can't do that, Marty. That's my personal property, Marty.
It's just a ridiculous film. Anybody with a brain would watch that and just laugh. It's just such a attack on him in ways that are childish.
Or asking him for an interview.
The church is used to winning PR wars, but their plan backfires as their actions catch the attention of Tony Ortega.
I immediately realized that it was a bizarre story that deserved coverage, so I put together this story. When Scientologists attack, I called it. It just got a huge reaction. NBC finally made this a national story. Really, you know, got to be fairly unprecedented in the history of American religion, you know.
This guy was the first guy that really, I think, understood and framed the issue of these squirrel busters as being a religious freedom issue. He's probably done more to expose them than any other journalist over at least the last 3 years.
After 200 days, and with growing media criticism, the squirrel busters disappeared from Ingleside. The battle for the future of Scientology appears to be going global. Independent Scientologists are joining protests with other groups against the church. David Miscavige is in England, at Hubbard's former home, the Mecca of Scientology, for one of their biggest annual events.
I hope you're ready. I sincerely hope you are ready.
I don't think he can put the genie back in the bottle at this point. I've been overtly practicing for 3 years, and dozens upon dozens of people have followed my lead around the world.
As soon as these gentlemen come, they're going to ask you to leave.
We're going to ask us to leave,
because you're trespassing.
We
are not trespassing. I told you that. I've shown you the map.
As you're aware, you know, there is an event going on, and we are here to make sure that you don't make any entrance on there. And for some reason, you seem to express particular interest into this event, and not on the cycle path.
The protesters and the independents hold a joint press conference, and the message gets through to the British press.
Marty Rathbun was the #2 in the church. His blog has become a rallying point for people who, perhaps like myself, who still, you know, believe in a lot of the aspects of Scientology and believe in its efficacy. The initial target is probably to break the monopoly and make it possible for people to practice freely whatever they want.
Miscavige has put all of his resources, intelligence, PR, legal, onto discrediting me and trying to silence me. And I've been saying it too, overtly and publicly, that while he's so obsessed and fixated on me, y'all should start practicing Scientology and getting busy with it. And people have been. So, you know, it's now being practiced all around the globe, independently and overtly.
Marty seems to be winning the battles, but can he win the war?
Mike 1122, assistance at the gates, please.
With the squirrel busters gone, Ingleside is a quiet coastal town once again. But is it the calm before the storm?
Hey, there's a car at that house, and he just pulled back in.
Marty spots a man acting suspiciously at the vacant house on the corner of his street.
There it is. Is that car underneath? Let me just get that plate.
Do you want to go knock on the door?
Yeah, I think I'm going to.
He goes to see if anyone is at home. Mosey checks out the number plate. It's registered to a private investigator. Marty discovers high-powered surveillance cameras trained on his house.
That little rat is trapped in that house. They put the car in the garage, and nobody's answering, and it's all barren in there.
Same address.
Boy, the idiots didn't even bother to get a rental car, huh?
Marty can't be sure who's behind what he perceives to be a new threat. But the effect on Mosey makes him reconsider his past.
If you look at the window that's facing us, you can see at the bottom left-hand corner there's a couple of cutouts. I thought it was a little bit strange that they would rent a house which serves no other purpose than to have some kind of electronic upfeed on every time we come and go.
In some ways, are they using your own tactics back on you?
Yeah, it's my own tactics back on me in terms of the surveillance. In a way, it's my karma, you know? I've done it to others. And so, in a way, it's you reap what you sow.
You can hear it and someone can tell you and kind of, but until you actually see it, it became real at that point. And I don't know, it's still taking it all in, I think.
Things are tough in Texas. But elsewhere, more and more Scientologists are turning independent. In Israel, for the first time in Scientology's history, an entire mission has announced that it's defecting and joining the independent movement.
We have a lot of new people coming. We're expanding rapidly. And we have people coming who were in the Church of Scientology and have left and are now with us. Even some people who knew us before, but refused to come in when we were associated with the church. Now they're free, they're happy, they're eager. So a lot of new people are coming.
But back in Texas, things are getting worse.
I recently exposed the surveillance cameras that have been trained on my home. And what do? Is they put up reflective shield on the window so I can't see inside. The message being, I suppose, well, we'll just make you wonder what's behind all these windows now.
What is it that we're doing that's so interesting? You know, we don't try to hide what we do at our house. They know who comes to our house.
There's a PI out in front of my house right now.
They're patrolling with their, you know, PIs in the cars, you know, taking pictures of the license plates at our house. So is it necessary to watch 24/7? So if they're trying to see what's going on inside the house, that's kind of like a little bit creepy.
The situation is becoming unbearable for Marty and Mosey.
So what level were they escalated, do you think?
I don't know. You have to ask them.
But Marty has always fought fire with fire.
You must know him better than anyone, so what do you think he would have been like in the church?
He'd have been one tough dude. I think...
Because he was known as an enforcer, wasn't he?
He would be someone who, you know, if something was happening, you'd say to him, get it done, and he'd get it done. And, you know, if that included slamming somebody on the friggin' bookcase, yeah, then that's what happened.
People are conditioned to accept that, you know? I was conditioned to accept that and participate in that. I think I recognize how Scientology at the upper levels does that to people.
Yet he doesn't want to return to being the sort of man he was in the church.
That fanaticism leads to all other evils. My goals have, you know, I've readjusted them radically since I got out of the Church of Scientology.
Marty has decided to start a new chapter in his life.
One of the problems with Scientology is that it becomes so religious, okay? You no longer have a life, so there's nothing to improve. I told Monique early on that, you know, the moment that I start giving up our life, you know, you gotta wake me up, because no matter, you know, how important I think this is not important if we don't have a life.
All his adult life, Marty has been defined by the Scientology teaching that attack is the best form of defense. Now, for the first time, he's chosen not to fight back and is retreating to a remote location out of the reach of the church and the squirrel busters.
Looking forward to, you know, carrying on from a much more peaceful location.
Has Marty Rathbun fully come to terms with what he did in the church? I think it's a process he's going through.
I had fulfilled my obligation in terms of making up for my activities that made Scientology what it is today.
I don't think he wants to be defined as, you know, Marty Rathbun, the, you know, #2 guy in the Church of Scientology. Like, I don't think that, because that's not who he is anymore.
We own our pasts. It's the one thing that nobody can take away from us. And the question is, you know, how do you process that and learn from that? We were just kids back then, but we grew up, and Miscavige never did. I just do what I do. I use my blog to educate people. I write books to educate people. I audit for a living. I learn more about the technology.
Yeah, when we first drove up, we were like, oh, because you can't see the house from the street. But we were just like, that's the ticket. That's what we want. In order for them to do what they did, they'd have to trespass on our property.
It's the kind of place where it doesn't really matter if they know where I am. I mean, really, helicopter's not even going to help them any.
We don't back down, okay? Backing down to me would mean him folding up tent and saying, I'm going to sell real estate or something. That's backing down to me. Changing your strategy and your approach is not backing down.
Look at little Chiquita. Look at her ears up.
I mean, one of the things that the church has not been able to do is to drive a wedge between him and I. And they haven't done that. As a matter of fact, they've only made it stronger. It was very nice this morning. We got up, it was dark out still. And we just stood out in the driveway and just looked up at the stars, and it was so peaceful and quiet.
Marty is still auditing and writing his blog, but has now rejected the label of Scientologist. The independent Scientology movement continues. The Church of Scientology states that Marty Rathbun has never been a part of its ecclesiastical management, and although he's been publicly attacking the church for 4 years, his claims have had no discernible effect whatsoever. It says there's no evidence of a global independent movement, and the Israeli mission in Haifa only ever numbered a few people, and that some have since rejoined the church. The Church of Scientology states there is nothing inappropriate about using sustained legal pressure to obtain legal redress, and that the idea harassment was used to achieve tax-exempt status is obvious nonsense. It also denies sending the Squirrel Busters. While acknowledging that some were Scientologists, Squirrel Busters Productions is a wholly separate organization. The Church of Scientology denies putting Marty under surveillance, but admits conducting a legal investigation into him in furtherance of potential litigation.